All right, Alexander, let's answer the questions from the live stream we did with Jeffrey Sachs. And let's start things off with Club 747. Is there any plans to have the Duran be 24/7 live global news? I'm sure you guys are able to make it happen, joining forces with like-minded channels.
Well, it's an ambitious strategy. I think for the moment we've got lots of things to do within our own channel. We've got various plans and programs. We've discovered over the period of time that the Duran has been in existence that the only way to work is to do it one step at a time. And maybe we will get to that point, and we would love to get to that point. That'd be a fantastic thing. But as I said, at the moment, we can't really plan that far.
Red Viking says SBU deems Danish DR journalist, DR is state TV like BBC, as a Russian spy, and she's thrown out of Ukraine, even though she is completely blue-pilled.
Well, there you go. I mean, with Ukraine, you're either absolutely with them in every respect, or they're against you. And it always astonishes me that people in the West just don't want to see this, or at least the governments and media outlets in the West don't want to see this. I mean, if I can say, Denmark is one of the most fervid supporters of Ukraine, so I find it astonishing that this has happened. But it also shows the sense of impunity that the Ukrainians have. They're able to do something like this, throw out someone, even though that person is Danish, and they know that nothing will change, that even Denmark won't protest about it.
Ackley says, what a privilege, lots of respect, Professor Sachs. Hope to see him in Hong Kong one day. Marif, thank you for that super sticker. Toilet Sauce says, with all due respect, but I would never have thought of Dr. Shock Therapy being a voice of reason.
Doctor who? Oh, shock. Well, can I just say, he's got. Read what he says. I mean, I'm not going to speak for him on this. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Sachs. I think you need to read through all the various things that he's written, his own discussions of his time in Russia in the 90s, and things of this kind. So I think if you read him, if you follow him, I think you'll understand him better.
Beto says, good morning from Brazil. 456T123G says, real men think as you men do, all other males are only animals who cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, the prophet's wife.
There you go. I think some animals perhaps do.
Commander Crossfire says, Merry Christmas. The greatest tragedy in modern European history was the collapse of the USSR. What is the future of the post-Soviet ruins, neo-union?
Well, possibly. You may be right. But, we are, in a way, privileged to see history being made. And it may very well be that the outcome is something like what you're suggesting. There are certainly integration forces operating right across the former Soviet space. But whether they will achieve the kind of effect that you want, whether that's even what people in Russia, for example, in the Kremlin want, I'm not so sure. But one way or the other, we will find out and we will see. As to the fact that the Soviet Union's collapse destabilized the international system and caused much suffering within the Soviet space itself, I don't have any doubt about that. I've absolutely come to that conclusion myself. I think that it, in the end, turned out badly, though that should not be taken to mean that I am not very critical indeed of much that the Soviet Union was and became.
Commander Crossfire says, if Poland invaded Ukraine, would NATO join in?
That's the big question. My straightforward answer is I think it would create an almighty split within NATO. I think the idea that Germany, for example, or France would go where Poland has led them is inconceivable. I think there would be a massive uproar in Germany, massive opposition in France. There would be a huge row. There would be a massive division of NATO. And if Poland went into Ukraine and got itself into trouble with the Russians, I think there would be an even greater debacle than the one we're facing now. And can I just add to that that the only way Poland could go into Ukraine successfully is if it does some kind of secret deal with the Russians, which of course it's denying that it will ever do. In other words, if it agrees to a partition arrangement with the Russians.
Belly Button, thank you for that super sticker. Yov, thank you for that super sticker. Kirill Frolov says, hey Jeffrey, are you familiar with structural financial crisis theory developed by the Russian economist Mikhail Kazin? In the last 20 years, he predicted the globalist world split into currency zones or blocks.
He discussed that. He said he wasn't aware of it. Though he wasn't aware of that, yeah.
Commando Crossfire says, does Russia's political system allow for a strong leader to follow Putin or stifle strong ambition? What is the shape of the Russian deep state?
We discussed that in the program. I think we responded to this particular question, and I think you made the point that political traditions in particular countries can go very deep indeed, and that whatever happens in Russia, it will remain Russia.
Eric Lakin says, Happy Christmas all and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Commander Crossfire says, Minsk 3 is equal to Moscow supervises Ukraine integration into Russia.
Quite possibly. Can I just say, I personally don't think there's going to be a Minsk 3. I think that we all I would like to see some kind of settlement to this, but I'm convinced it will be a military outcome with the Russians dictating terms. I see no other outcome to this conflict.
Ghost Pepper says, I love you all, and Gonzalo Lira, please pick time frames you post. This was an off chance. I work as a civilian doctor for NATO, 17 years Army from Germany. We all know this war is hopeless. God and the lead says so.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Ricey says, U.S. has one playing card left. Do they intervene and gamble it all, or they look for an off-ramp, which includes diplomacy with the Russians?
You know what I think the problem is? I think the Pentagon knows perfectly well that intervening is really a crazy idea which risks World War III, and I think they will put their foot down in the end and they will stop it. I think they will find means to stop it. But at the same time, I don't think the Pentagon and those people have the political courage at the moment to come out and tell the ideologues, the neocons, all of those people, we have to find an off-ramp. And that's why we're drifting towards a debacle. That's essentially the problem.
James Howell 9000 says, sounds like tensions will always exist between Russia and the West, with the battleground in Eastern Europe. Is it always Russia protecting herself from dictators like Napoleon, Adolf, and Dick Cheney?
I'm sorry to say that as of this moment in time, I'm afraid you may be right. I speak as someone who has believed through most of his lifetime, until fairly recently, that some sort of reconciliation between Russia and Europe, and the rest of the Europe, I should say, was possible and would happen. The events of 2022 have shattered my faith in this. So I'm afraid you may be right. I'm going to make an observation, and I speak now to my Polish friends, and I have many. It is ultimately Poland that holds the key. Poland, which is a Slav country which shares much in cultural terms with Russia. If Poland achieves a reconciliation with Russia, that might stabilize the peace in Europe and end this cycle of, European leaders coming together, bringing the whole of Europe together, and then launching some kind of crusade against the Russians, which we've seen repeatedly. So Poland is going to become a very important country in that respect in the future. But for the moment, I'm sorry to say, I think you may be right.
John Judy's, thank you for that super sticker. Sad Fair, thank you for that super chat. Tower Man Harris, thank you for that super sticker. Zariel says, this is great. Thank you so very much for having Jeffrey on. The Duran is a joy to listen to. Free knowledge. Thank you for that, Zariel. Michael Tombros says, Putin is a better chess player than the Washington deep state.
Well, I think that the one fundamental point about that is that, of course, Putin does actually strategize, and he works with the united government that strategizes with him. The US, the deep state, partly because it acts so covertly. I mean, it's nothing is talked in the open. It is deeply factionalized, and you have different people playing different chess games there all at the same time, and often clashing and jarring with each other.
Danielle says, what future role do you see for the United Nations? Will it be able to be reformed to be more representative of sovereign states and people of the world and out of the pocket of the USA and interest groups?
I think that Professor Sachs answered that one thoroughly. Yeah.
Khan's Corner says, wow, Baltic states are now US's best friends. Wonder how France, Germany, Italy are feeling, and do they plan to take back their power anytime soon?
Well, very good question. I'm going to say something about this. I know what the French, the Germans, and all the rest are feeling about that. I mean, they seem to be in awe of the US and terrified of the Baltic states, which seems bizarre to me. I think this relationship between the US and the Baltic states is going to end badly. Either the Baltic states will drag the US into some kind of confrontation with the Russians, which is against its interests, or the Baltic states will find that the US will turn away from them and they'll be faced with an angry Russia that they've alienated and which is right on their doorstep. One way or the other, this alliance is going to end badly.
David S. says, so what happens now?
Yeah, Russia goes on and wins is the answer. Absolutely, yeah.
Sammy295 says, amazing. Thanks for the background and insight, Mr. Sachs. Thank you, Duran. Fantastic guest as always. Keep up the great work. In this age of deception, only the truth shall set us free. Thank you for that, Sammy. David Zuckerus says, what is the possibility for the use of autonomous military robots being used on the battlefields of Ukraine?
I think that we will probably see autonomous robots being used increasingly in war. By the way, I know a Russian scholar, a critic, by the way, of the Putin government, whose major field this is. He's talking a lot, writing a lot. He works in Russia, I should say, on the ethical dimensions of this. I'm afraid we are going to see them. Whether we're going to see them in Ukraine, I don't know. I mean, this is still a very, very immature technologies. But there are autonomous robots, autonomous drones. They've already been used in Libya, I believe. Turkish drones that operated autonomously, and we could start to see something like that in Ukraine. It's not impossible.
Elza says the best about the United Nations, the Russian diplomats.
I would agree, actually.
DHB says, thank you, Duran. Michael Tombros says, is it true that the elites in Washington worship the devil and this is why they hate Russia?
Well, I'm sure most of them probably don't think in those terms. I'm not going to get into the spiritual beliefs of people like Nancy Pelosi and co. I think that is a dark place. I'm not going to enter it. I'm not going to enter.
As Matt says, why doesn't the Duran and through Robert Barnes sue the U.S. government on behalf of Assange and take it to the Supreme Court? I and many see you guys as an essential fix in Western democracy.
Because there are other people doing it. I mean, please don't think that Julian Assange is without legal support. And I don't want to speak for him, but I mean, I think Robert Barnes, I mean, if he turns up playing a role in any prosecution of Julian Assange in the United States, if we ever come to that, then I would not be at all surprised. I'd stress I don't speak for Robert Barnes on this.
Vunjavak says NATO can defeat Russia in 3 days. Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger. Are Western leaders insane or what? This is beyond a joke.
It's a completely insane comment. It's straight out of Doctor Strangelove, and it's deeply disturbing that a person like that holds such a powerful position in the United States.
Raul Pinto says, thank you, Mr. Sachs. Please direct the Vatican in the right direction, as I believe they are lost.
Well, I'm sure he's giving them lots of good
He
advice.
answered that.
Whether they're listening is another matter.
Amir, thank you for that super sticker. G-Dog says, thanks to Rand, and thank you, Jeffrey. Yakov Fox says, Alexis, please ask Mr. Sachs if he ever plans on going on Joe Rogan. It would be a blessing. Thank you.
He answered that one. He doesn't even know who Joe Rogan is, which is, yeah.
Tarot Man says, thank you, the Duran and Professor Sachs. And Dimitrios Matamis, thank you for that super chat. And that is everything. Thanks, everybody, for those messages.